time for our keynote. It is hour. Shall we get ready for our keynote?
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it.
I'm so excited. So I am going to introduce Christopher Fuller. He is the owner-operator of GRIOT'S, and he is, in my tradition, what we call an OG. He's been at this for decades. Doesn't look it, but he's been at it for decades, and he has a strong story of resilience and building your practice and doing it in a way that you can be proud of, and you know, that everybody is running their own race, right? We're all doing our own thing. So I would love to let's get right to it. Christopher.
I'm ready.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Yes. Without further ado, here's our presenter, one Christopher Fuller. And let's throw a little reaction in there.
Hi guys. Hello. I'm just gonna start sharing my screen so that we can get right into this and then get to some questions. All right. First, what is resilience? Psychologists define it as a process of adapting well in the face of adversity. And it's a kind of thing that you don't know really how much you possess until after you've gone through a trauma or, you know, some say weathered the storm or walked through a desert with just a little canteen by your side. So therefore, when you get advice that is like, you know, just hang in there, you might have a tendency to react in a way that, like that, you know. And let me tell you something, I understand that reaction, because when bad things occur, sometimes it seems as if it's only happening to you and that you're the one that has only ever experienced this. But as cliche as it sounds, there really is people out there that have felt your pain and feel your pain. So, a long and scribing road. Yes, I've been at this quite a long time. Actually, this month marks the beginning of my career, which was 28 years ago with a little company called MG Taylor. So that's me in my neophyte scribe days with my flat top. Then in the mid-90s with MG Taylor, I'd call that kind of our salad days, because that's where we partnered with Ernst & Young, which was a big consulting firm to do design shops, and I really started to grow as a scribe. Working in the new millennium as a solo entrepreneur, I call that my Have Marker World travel days, where I've worked on 5 continents and more countries than honestly than I can remember. To the present day, the remote collaboration days, those travel days are over. And one thing that is ironic is that first meeting that I did back in June of '92, it was a community event. And one of the things that was on everybody's mind was the social stress. You know, LA had just been through the riots. 28 years later, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's just tragic that these societal ills still continue to plague us. And also looking at the drawings, a smaller tragedy is I've lost quite a bit of hair since those days. But okay, so I've got a bit of an odd sense of humor. I'm going to formally introduce myself. Yes, I'm Christopher Fuller, and even though I might seem as cool as the other side of the pillow, let me tell you guys, that's a joke. Inside, I'm still just this guy, just this dorky kid that carried a sketchbook everywhere and drew all the time. I was a lifelong drawer, and that was because from the time I was a child, I was preparing for my dream jobs, which was either going to be working for Marvel Comics or Disney. It was just, there was no other option. And so I drew all the time. I went and got my proper good drawer certification from Rutgers University with a degree in visual arts. And then after college, I shipped my portfolio off to these dream jobs and sat back like, well, here we go. And I was rejected. I was a couple of them more than once, actually. And then not even the dream jobs were rejecting me, but even I remember Hallmark greeting cards, illustration and design division, they rejected me. And that rejection letter, I remember like getting it and it was opening up. You wanted to work here and that was your hope, but we reviewed your portfolio and decided nope. It was in a greeting card. Can you believe that? No. Okay, it was not in a greeting card, but it might as well have been. And let me tell you something, I can laugh now, but it hurt then. That feeling of, oh gosh, so, now what? But what was fortuitous is that those rejections led me to Orlando, which is where my parents had moved while I was in college. And so I was working as a freelance artist doing some caricature work. And there happened to be 2 people in Orlando that had this little company that did not reject me. That was Matt Taylor and Gil Taylor. If you guys aren't familiar with them, they own this little boutique consulting company called MG Taylor Corporation that did these very innovative workshops that brought together people to work on problems together, but to solve them collectively through collaborative design and discussion. And as part of their process, they use graphic recorders to document, knowledge workers, but one of the roles was what we called scribing. And so that was where I first learned the craft. And that brings me to my first resilience lesson. And that is, don't chase money, chase interesting opportunities. Because my whole career starts from saying yes to something that paid no money. My father had been in an MG Taylor design shop. It was a community event in Orlando. And, it was 3 long days. I was wondering, like, wow, where is he? Because he would go to these meetings and come back late. But when it was over, he was so jazzed up. And one of the reasons he was jazzed up is he knew that there was going to be an even bigger meeting with the city of Orlando. And the Taylors would need to augment their little small staff with some volunteer scribes. So he comes home and he tells me about this great meeting that he was in about raising community involvement and civic responsibility, and how I need to be a part of the next one. And let me tell you something, there's no sexier subject than raising community involvement and civic responsibility to a young 20-something guy. So just as my eyes were rolling into the back of my head, my dad says, oh, and the volunteer work that you'd be doing is these scribes, they listen and they draw everything that people are saying. And I was like, whoa, 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 you buried the lead. Like, what do these people do? And he tells me again, and he says, yeah, and that's what they would need you to volunteer to do. And I was like, oh, great. How much does it pay? And he's like, you don't know what volunteer means. I sent you to college, you get a good education. Volunteer doesn't pay anything. And so my first reaction was no, I didn't want to do it because I was already doing a lot of low paying freelance work, and just now I've got to devote this time and not get paid. So I said no. My dad was really told me, look, you've got to think this over, explain it again. So a couple of days went by and it was just going through my head. And I said, well, okay, I'll go down and I just check out the demonstration that they were doing, because before the event started, Matt Taylor invited the knowledge workers to come and just see what the process was. And I remember it was this one night in June, and I went down there, and it was an epiphany. Now, I'm not sure if it's, the accumulation of all these years, or if it was California's recent passing of Prop 64 that is affecting my memory. But I swear to God, when I saw that guy's marker hit the wall to capture Matt's opening remarks, and he's drawing, welcome, scribes, I heard the 2001 theme. It was like, bum, 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 dun, dun, bum, bum, bum. And I'm sitting there, my jaw hits the floor. And I'm like, what the bleep is this? And why wasn't it at the job fair? I was like, why did I say no? This is where I should be. And so, yes, in 92, I did. I said yes to something that paid no money. And it changed my life. And in some ways, it changed that little sector, particular sector of graphic recording, because I say that graphic recording had always been a lot more democratized from its roots. And that's because it was born out of graphic facilitation. And if you guys know the history, Interaction Associates, David Strauss, and Michael Doyle, they were former architects, just like Matt, and they would use graphic facilitation as part of their strategy and design, collaborative design process. And what was even more important is that next door happened to be a man named David Sibbett, who you guys must know his name. David is a man who I consider the father of graphic facilitation, because he codified the methods that are still tried and true to this day. But those methods, because the person holding the marker was usually the person leading the meeting, so hence graphic facilitator. So it was very efficient, the graphics, very straightforward. And that's why I call it democratized, because you can take a course and that's the beauty of it, that's the power of it. But at MG Taylor, the facilitation was pretty much exclusively Matt and Gail. And so the person scribing, without having that burden of being the lead facilitator, could just listen and concentrate on capturing the conversation. And most of the people in the early 90s, at least, who were doing this had come through an organizational development background. But then let's say if that person holding the marker instead had an art background, and also had just a lot of images in their head, had a love of, history and trivia and pop culture, and could dial that up at a moment's notice. And that's where I came in. And I should say too that one thing I realized, that this is my first IFVP, but there's also somebody in attendance here who I believe it's her first IFVP. And it's this person who I recommended take a Grove course, because she said she wanted to be a graphic facilitator. So before the pandemic, she did her first Grove course, and she was so charged up about the Grove that she said that she wants to come to IFVP. So Meg Duffy, I know you're watching somewhere, hello. And I'll get back into my presentation. I just had to say that, had to share that. So yeah, I come in and I also have this other ingredient where at that time I was just little ignorant enough to not realize that maybe I was doing it wrong by adding so many sketches and colors and lettering styles, you know, mix of lettering styles and illustrations. And so I just kind of injected a little bit of who I was into my scribing. Now, to clarify that, I just want to say that this personality injected style, it's not better, it's not worse, it's just a different way of working for, you know, illustrative graphic recorders. What you see here on the screen, this is what I think of as democratized. It's efficient, fast, and it gets the point across. You can probably tell that's a man, but it's not just a man, it's Michelangelo's David, right? Curly hair, the fig leaf gives it away, the pose. Personality infused style is just a little bit more illustrative. It is influenced by illustration, street art, graffiti, comics, graphic design, animation, fine art, and even music. Basically, it utilizes whatever a scribe believes will enhance and communicate a visual story. But at the same time that was gaining a foothold with M.G. Taylor was coincidentally also when we were getting some attention from big consulting firms, one in particular. Because in 1995, Ernst & Young came to an invitational design shop that we were facilitating at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. And this was an invitational event with about 4 or 5 other companies to have a discussion about the future of work. And so EY, they sent about 5 partners to this event. And I remember what was key for me is that their senior partner, a man named Lee Sage, who, you know, I always just have this image of this guy. He was like an alpha's alpha type. And at the end of the 3 days, he comes up to me and he goes, "Nice job, Mr. Picasso." And I was like, oh, wow, you know, I've got a name tag on and I don't think this guy knows my name. And seriously though, the whole event, I think that the Taylor process, because you know, Matt and Gail, I mean, just the first class facilitation, the unique mobile environment that we used, our whole team, gosh, who was on that event? Kelvin and Francis, Brian Kaufman. Anyway, it went so well that they wanted to, Ernst & Young was interested in doing their own event to see if this was a process that they could take in-house and sell to their own clients. So then a few months later, they did their own design shop in Denver. And this was a really pivotal event because it was, you know, it was a go or no go to marry up. And it went beautifully. Really, one of the best events I've been a part of. And I remember at the end, we brought drinks and champagne in because we knew, hey, we're going forward. And once again, Lee Sage, the senior partner, he stood up and he said, you know, guys, we are going to have Matt and Gail train up a bunch of facilitators. We are going to take you guys, your environment, you know, the whole kit and caboodle. And then he tipped a champagne glass at me and he goes, and we're going to make a bunch of our own Mr. Picassos all over the world. And they did. And I remember I was just like, I was like, wow, he doesn't know my name. He still doesn't know my name. You know, I'm just Mr. Picasso, Christopher. And they did. And I've written actually about that on my site, an article called The History of Modern Scribing and Graphic Recording, at least that one particular section of it, of graphic recording. And there's a link in my bio if you want to read about that. It was a great time to be aboard the M.G. Taylor boat, and I'm proud of my time there. But I won't go into it too much, the details, but by 1998, we had hit an iceberg that was made out of a bad contract and some big debts, and things got rough. And I left. I did. I had to leave, and it was a tough decision. So I headed back down to my parents' house in Orlando, feeling really defeated. And worst of all, I was completely fearful of what I would become without being a member of MG Taylor. And that leads me to my second lesson of resilience. And this is uncontrolled fear short circuits your rational thinking capability and can inhibit your ability to make wise decisions. Because like I said, 95, this is me, I'm king of the world. And life comes at you fast. 98, wake-up call. That 6-year journey with MG Taylor, that ended for me then. And I had put all my self-worth into being a member of MG Taylor's core staff. And so without them, without that, I felt worthless and I felt fearful. But fear is natural. But the problem is that when you let fear run rampant, and then that's when it can truly harm you. So how do we manage fear? Well, one of the great things about this job is that you guys know we get to listen in on some really cool presentations by some fabulous speakers. And what you're seeing here is a graphic report that I captured on a short presentation on mindfulness by a psychologist named Rich Fernandez. And he gave a speech on mindfulness as a technique to overcome fear and adversity and stress. And it always resonated with me. So I went back to that and to share with you guys. And I just want to pick out just a couple things from it. Let's see, first off, fear, it's like I said, it's natural. It's part of the limbic brain system, the monkey brain, as Sunny says. And it's what controls our basic emotions like pleasure, anger, and fear. And you have to remember, picking some things out, that Mr. Fernandez noted that first, clouds pass. Everything is temporary, guys. The good and the bad, especially the bad, you've got to keep that in mind. And knowing that means that you have to choose what to focus on during those bad times. Focus on things that add value, things that don't distract you. And then remember that creativity comes from being open-minded, because a fearful mind is a closed mind. And as people working in our industry, as creative people, that means it's doubly important that we remember to stay positive and keep an open mind. So how do you do this during times of stress? Well, one thing that a technique he just talked about was circuit training. And what that is maintaining focused awareness, a focused attention and open awareness training. Think of it as a meditative state that helps you gain insight and clarity. Athletes think of this as the zone. And Mr. Fernandez, he offered some activities like meditation, yoga, or jogging exercise, But I'm thinking, as graphic facilitators, visual practitioners, we have built-in predisposition towards circuit training, and that is our love of drawing, our affinity for sketching. It's built into us, and don't just draw for your job, for a living. I use it as a stress reliever. I use it to keep me sane. I draw just about every damn day since I was little. And it is, to me, I think the best circuit training that you can do. So, you know, if you don't keep a journal or draw on your iPad, or just, you know, even, you know, sketch in a notebook, just keep that a part of your daily practice. Now, look, what I did not learn from my parents or Matt and Gail, I learned from another great philosopher. His name is Master Yoda. And if Master Yoda were to add one more thing about fear, it would be fear is nothing more than attitude. And so when your attitude changes, your experience and your outcomes will change. But, you know, because it's Yoda, the syntax would be switched up. So he'd probably be like, you know, fear, attitude it is, nothing more than, I wish that was the last time in my life I did a Yoda impression, but it might not be. So look, just remember there's no better way to ensure failure than to be too fearful to ever try. So don't let a fearful attitude keep you from trying. Which leads me to resilience lesson 3. And that is, resiliency requires having an attitude that is about connecting rather than disconnecting. Because you see, fear coupled with self-isolation becomes smothering depression. And those are toxic ingredients that lead you to disconnect from the world, which is the exact wrong thing you should be doing during times of strife. But unfortunately, immediately after leaving MG Taylor, that's exactly where I was. You know, I can, in hindsight, I can give this advice, but at that time, I went back down to Orlando and shut the door. You know, the room that my parents had for me, and I wouldn't even talk to them. I'd come out and eat, and then go back into it, and, you know, watch TV and sit in bed. And I was ignoring messages and calls from people who wanted to just check up on me and see how I was doing. And I remember one of the messages that I received was an email from this guy, Alan Mayfield. He was at that time the head of their Knowledge Worker Network, inviting me to become a part of their network, what they were doing. I didn't answer it immediately because, honestly, I was a little put off, because at that point back then, in my warped perspective, I considered them at least partly responsible for sinking the boat that I was on. So I was like, F your invitation. And went right back into the room. And let me tell you something. I ignored it because I was too busy partying at that time. Okay, that's what kind of party was I having? Well, ain't no party like a pity party, y'all, because a pity party don't stop. So throw your hands in the air and wave them like you just don't care, because you literally just don't care. And I didn't care. The beauty, though, is that I was lucky that I was home, and my parents were there to remind me of the good that I had done. And I remember my mom, before she would go to work, you know, she would knock on the door and check up on me. And this time she said, look, you know, you quit your job. You didn't quit your life. You didn't quit what you love to do. Maybe, you know, reach out to some people or something. And it was good advice. And so I realized that, yeah, you know, I can still do what I love to do. And what is that? Well, you know, I love to scribe. I love to tell visual stories in real time. I feel our job is important because it helps people distinguish the signal from the noise, which is critical in this day and age. And over my long career, I've really come to believe that I have 4 responsibilities as a real-time visual storyteller. And that is, first off, just being a reporter, documenting the key points of what you hear, capturing the facts, and putting a visual narrative around the facts. Being a mutual educator is the second role and responsibility. And what I mean by that is, as opposed to an educator or a teacher, you know, I can't go into a client job and teach them about their supply chain, you know. But just by listening to the participants and showing them where their ideals converge and diverge, I can teach them something, mutually educate them on what they already know by revealing patterns, literally helping them to see what they're talking about. Which leads to the third role and responsibility, which is being a visual modeler. And this is synthesizing concepts in real time by creating graphic models that help simplify ideas that can sometimes be complex. For instance, I'm using a bunch of words to describe my four roles and responsibilities, but the graphic here sums it up as an integrated model much more simply. And then finally, being an inspirer. And that means taking metaphorical comments and bringing them to life in a way that helps inspire a team. And this is where I've lived a lot in my career as a visual storyteller. And I must say that I had a scribe once asked me, he's like, oh, but what about explanation? And I said, well, you know, if you do these four things in concert, because, you know, it's not like, oh, now I'm being an inspirer, now I'm being a modeler. Now, no, it's happening organically. And if you're doing these four responsibilities, then the natural output of that is explanation. Because once again, you know, you're going to explain to them, you know, blockchain, you know. Okay, so that leads me to, after MG Taylor, I decided to start a solo entrepreneurial vehicle for myself. And so I launched GRIOT'S, which is the name of my venture. Griot, if you don't know, I borrowed that term. It's a West African term. It means a tribe's historian, musician, praise singer, poet, or storyteller. And so my approach is that I like to think of graphic reporting as being a visual storyteller and visual songwriting. So I took the ASC up on its offer to become a part of their network. And let me tell you something, it was one of the best decisions I made because I had a lot more growth to do. And also they were expanding, at least at that time, were really expanding on the things that we had taught them at MG Taylor. So I'm really great that I did that because it helped me to expand my personal and professional network. But none of that would have happened if it did not look to connect with others. I mean, if I would have stayed disconnected, then none of that would have happened. And that brings me to my next lesson, lesson 4. How do you connect to bolster your resiliency during a crisis? You've got to express yourself. There's time for self-introspection, but at some point, you've got to reach out to others. I find that doing projects that express my passion helps me to connect with others. And when I say, when I'm talking about, you know, connecting with others, I'm really speaking, of course, today to this era that we're living in with social media, because it makes it easier than ever before to do these type of connections. And I'm talking specifically about really two things, of course, LinkedIn, which is where you can share your professional philosophy, you can connect with potential clients, be with people that are, I say, swimming in the same stream that you are in. Of course, because you're visual people, Instagram, where you can share your talent to connect with others. but also be inspired by others visually. And maybe a little less so Facebook, especially on the personal side, because that's usually just where you share obituaries of celebrities that have died 3 times already on that site, or political arguments with adults from high school that you never should have befriended in the first place, or advice from quasi-Eastern philosophies, or Marilyn Monroe, or Master Yoda. Or you can combine them all for the best of all worlds. Best friends, Diamond's Arto girl. Okay, that's the last time. I swear. I will never imitate Yoda again. May the force be with you guys. So, expressing yourself, sharing your skills through spec and passion projects. And, once again, I mean, a spec project, that's just something you take on where you blend the professional and the passion, and you just do something because it interests you and hopefully will interest others. So it's great to do these things, but like Steve Jobs famously said, real artists ship. So eventually you've got to share. How can you do that? Well, you can express yourself by maybe writing a blog. Again, that drawing that you're doing is stress relief. Maybe put it towards a more directed use. You could volunteer to scribe for maybe a nonprofit. And of course, in this era, that means, maybe some digital scribing or infographic or presentation design. Or you could do a video production or multimedia. The thing is, it's just, you've got to stay connected, and you've got to share and connect to other people. So for me personally, what I did when the pandemic hit and I watched my calendar evaporate, I decided I wanted to produce a visual song. And so I created this this video to address the topic of the average everyday nurse or doctor or clinician toiling away during the coronavirus, especially in our hardest hit areas like New York and my city now, Los Angeles. And a professional reason was I chose that sector because healthcare is an industry where I have done really the bulk of my work this last 10 years. And so I've got a lot of experience there. But then I had a personal connection because healthcare has always meant a lot to me, because my earliest memories are of being on a ventilator. When I was a toddler, I had a massive asthma attack that at one point that was supposed to kill me. They said, hey, he's not going to make it. And so I spent a lot of my time as a little kid in a children's ward. And the nurses, I remember they took, the old school nurses, they took very good care of me. So much so that I proposed to one of them, I remember. And she said she'd wait for me. So I think she'd be in her late 70s now. You can find me on Bumble, Sharon. So this is a screen capture of the video song that I wrote called Sing for the Unsung. Like I said, it was a remote collaboration between myself and 3 other people. And I have the link in my bio if you're interested in checking it out. The end result, it was a qualified success. Meaning, the project, it grew in scope. It took the whole month of April working every day, 12 to 14 hours a day, because I felt this rush to get it out, because I felt like the country was going to fracture on this coming together to support it. And of course, and the country did fracture. So I worked every day, 12 to 14 hours a day, collaborating with these 3 incredible people who supported my passion for working for nothing across 2,000 miles, working, like I said, long hours like that, I tend to sometimes forget some basic care habits like hygiene and eating. So by the end, I had lost 10 pounds and well, I say that the end result, I could write a diet book called How to Lose 10 Pounds in 30 Days and Gain 9 Twitter Followers. Learn the miracle of the Passion Project weight loss diet. Now, seriously, what I may not have gained in weight or massive Twitter followers, which was honestly never the intention in the first place, I did gain in what I like to think of as targeted audience hits. And that means that in that market sector of healthcare, I heard back from a lot of my former clients, my current clients. Those 9 followers that I gained, that was all in healthcare. And the response, it was super positive. And I actually got some concrete remote work opportunities to do infographic and some design presentations remotely. So doing that spec and project, to share actually bolstered my resiliency because it created some new opportunities. Another key thing is that I had to learn a lot of new skills to do this. I had to learn some video editing. I had to learn some new software programs. And that self-education process, that is my 5th resilience lesson. And that is diversification and adaptation are the keys to resilience. So you see this graphic. Imagine the asteroid, that's the pandemic. Now, who would you rather be? Would you rather be the big dinosaur or the tiny little silhouetted creature in the foreground? Yeah, you want to be like that critter because, that's mammals. And the whole reason we're here is because mammals had the ability to diversify and adapt, the keys to resilience. As visual practitioners, like our mammalian ancestors 65 million years ago, I feel that our size is to our advantage because we are a community of nimble businesses made up of either sole proprietorships or small firms. And compared to the big giant consulting companies that some of us may work with or tech firms, we can more easily shift focus now and change direction. Because if you have to change direction quickly, would you rather be the Titanic or would you rather be a speedboat? We're speedboats. So for my venture, GRIOT'S, like I said, when that calendar evaporated, I talked with a colleague, a good friend of mine, Peter Duran. You guys of Alpha Chimp probably know his name. And I was like, well, I'm using my time to bone up on remote scribing, working on my Wacom tablet and my iPad to explore that just by listening to, of course, YouTubes and TED Talks. It's great exercise for us. It's actually the thing that Peter and I teach to people when they say that they want to become graphic recorders. That's one of the exercises that we do together. And so also I realized that, I'd placed the bulk of my company's focus on live on-site graphic recording, and maybe it was time to augment some of that and the things that I thought of ancillary things like the infographic design and the illustration and the presentation, the work that I was doing. So I made sure to use social media to hey, shout out that of these other skills, services that I offered. But during that time, one thing during the practice time that I discovered is that I really and this is, maybe it's an age thing, I like the tactile approach. So I invested in oversized dry erase wall. You know, I bought some film lights, got the green screen so that I could work in that way and share that remotely. It's a method actually that was explained pretty well in the graphic facilitation Facebook group by Guillaume Legon, and I will put that link in my bio if you guys want to learn more about, you know, his technique, because that's where I heard about that from. But the bottom line is that you've got to find an adaptable solution that works right for you. So I'm not going to, you know, lie and tell you that it's easy navigating a career over this, you know, many decades. But if you, one, remember to seek interesting opportunities rather than money, or given the economic realities of today, at least don't reflexively say no to a job because you feel it doesn't pay well. At least hear it out, because you never know what it could evolve into. And then two, look to manage your uncontrolled fear. And once again, explore mindfulness techniques, especially use our built-in circuit training of drawing to help as a stress reliever, to take care of yourself personally. Three, if you strive to have an attitude that is about connecting rather than disconnecting, then fourth, to connect with people, once you've done that, you've got to share your talents through some spec projects or passion projects and get that out there on the social networks. And then fifth, work on diversifying and adapting your business to fit the new reality. If you take those things in unison, I consider that like a shield of resilience, so that you can navigate through life's tough challenges. So that when you're in this situation again, and you're that little hang in there baby kitty, you're not going to be overwhelmed with fear, but instead you will have some armor that can help you face life's challenges. Yes, that is a cat with battle armor. And you will have an attitude that is more positive and ready and willing to change, so that you can ride into battle like this, a samurai equipped with a shield of resilience to help guard you through the tough times. And yes, that is me with my shield of resilience, ready to tackle whatever life has in store. Guys, thank you for listening. Once again, I'm Christopher Fuller. This is where you can find me online. I think we have a little time for some questions. I hope I didn't go through that too fast. I guess Sunny or Brandon, should we take some questions now?
Yeah, sure. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat so that we can talk with and find out what Christopher has to say. What is your anti-aging secret? Peter from Alpha Chimp would like to know.
What is my anti-aging secret? I can't divulge that actually, but I will say that it involves some teachings from Master Yoda that were never in the movies. They're not canon, but I can share that with you though.
Sue Epperson asks, what are your thoughts about collaboration versus competition in our industry?
Gosh, because of my MG Taylor background, I always lean towards collaboration, or mix of it, as we would call it, co-opetition, meaning that you know, if we're swimming in the same stream, you have to remember that your strengths can always maybe augment somebody else, and their strengths can augment yours, because you can't, you know, especially we're all small ventures, and to try to take on everything yourself, trust me, is foolish. And so, like, I know when I've wanted to do some things collaboratively, like teaching, I reached out to someone who I had great respect for, and it benefited both of us. So I would say think about it as co-opetition. You know, you collaborate, and of course you've got your own solo venture, but you're going to need other people, and you look for ways to form alliances.
Great. Right. I agree with everything you said. It's very important to work with our colleagues. That tends to be my my MO. But Martine in Belgium, her question is how to balance working for free, which is an interesting experience, and maybe undercutting colleagues by doing the work for free.
How to balance working for free. Well, you know, everybody has their own threshold of what that means. I say the jobs that you agree to work for free, make sure that you've got a personal connection to it. So like I do some nonprofit scribing with an organization that means a lot to me. And I have to pick and choose those type of jobs because, you know, rent has to be paid. And as far as undercutting people, well, now, are you taking the job solely just because you want to, you know, cut the legs out from somebody, and you're not thinking about your own, you know, what you're going to get out of it? Because, you know, that could just be, that could be very self-harmful. So I would say just be very picky and choosy about the jobs that you take for free or either no money, and then it will kind of sort it out in itself.
Another question comes from Mike Fleisch in Cincinnati, the great Mike Fleisch.
Hello, Mike.
He's interested in hearing your thoughts on the implications for our practice and practitioners as we consider community and global resilience.
Well, I don't know if we're ever going back to a normal situation. The days of, you know, a lot of travel and big teams, I think those days are gone. You know, that there might be, you know, some scattering of it, but I don't know if we're going to get back to that. And so that means that as a community, we have to, and I'm not sure quite how this is done, but maybe some remote collaborative work opportunities that we could be involved in, you know, maybe supporting a conference where we're all working in our own studios, but working and collaborating remotely. That's something that's probably going to start, you know, happening, but I'm not sure when or how.
Carl in Belgium says, is accepting your fear the first step to managing it?
Yes, yes. You know, I had that written down and neglected to say that because I was so fearful and nervous. But yeah, no, the first thing about fear is that you've got to acknowledge that, yes, this is natural. Don't freak out by it. And then that is the first step to overcoming it, so that it is not something that is just continuously overwhelms you, because that is what I didn't do when I left MG Taylor. You know, I remember I was driving down I-95 to go back to my parents' house, and just, you know, tears in my eyes, scared as, you know, just really afraid. And I was like that for weeks. And I wish I had acknowledge that that was natural, and I didn't blame myself for what had happened, but I did. I was young.
Yeah, it's difficult being gentle with ourselves sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
One more question, and this one is from Nevada Lane in the Bay Area. What are you learning and playing with now?
What am I learning? And well, one, I picked up some new software because I abandoned the Adobe suite. Just for me personally, I had had enough, and so I had to. I started working with these programs, Affinity. You guys probably, some of you might actually use it. If you are tired of Adobe, I recommend it actually. It's a lot more economical, and they've got some pretty powerful programs that are familiar but different. Also, the hardware side, I realized when I was practicing that I no longer like my Wacom tablet because I had an older Cintiq that, they make great products, but they're one bad thing is that they kind of abandoned their older things as far as continuously updating the drivers. So I just got tired of that, and so then I bought I think it was a Huron Canvas. So I had to program in the macros again, and of course that's just hardware, software. Also, just as far as working remotely, something to train myself is just the self-discipline of it. It was always easy for me I always worked better event-wise. I used to tell people this is why I didn't like being a facilitator, and I used to call myself just a scribe, because a facilitator would have to be in a relationship with a client and really, be with them the whole step of the way. And I used to say a scribe, instead of a relationship, is more like a one night stand. You're wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and you leave them dazzled and breathless, and you go on to the next client.
Mm-hmm.
But now working remotely, it's funny. You've got to prepare even more in a lot of ways, and have this continuous because both you and the client, we're all kind of learning how to do this together. And so I had to get a lot better disciplined about my remote working habits, because it's easy to be at an event and be professional, because you're at an event, you're in that environment surrounded by people, you put your professional hat on. When you're working at home on something, you've got to have that self-discipline to remember that, hey, I've got to shut the phone, I've got to silence the phone, I've got to not look at TikTok and YouTube, and I've got to concentrate because I've got a deadline. As a matter of fact, I do. I have a Monday deadline, so after this, I'll be sitting at my tablet making an infographic. And yeah, you just have to learn that self-discipline.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christopher. That was a really, really, really great keynote. I think it resonated with a lot of our audience here, and you are, I've known you for years, but so I can say it. I love you, man.
I love you too. Brandon, thanks guys. Thanks everybody in the IFE. Meg, Duffy, I know you're out there watching, and I'm glad you liked the Grove course that you had.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
In the chat, I would love for you to take a moment and, take a few minutes, take a minute to think about which of the resilience principles shared by Christopher can you capitalize on? Can you really develop in the next few months? Take a moment to think about that, and then type it into the chat. Also, you guys can go and look at Christopher's slide presentation. If you go look at his bio, it's in several places. You can find it under his bio. You can also find it in the documents on the home tab. So some of the answers are mitigating fear of the unknown, sharing passion projects, anything Yoda ever said.
Right, right. Sharing the talent. Yeah. It's good. Adapt or collapse. Diversification and adaptation. It's good stuff.
And like, remember, my whole career starts from seeking an interesting opportunity. I wasn't chasing money. It sounded interesting, and it eventually changed my life.
That's awesome. So there's also a fun little reactions button with a round of applause. If you want to give Christopher a round of applause, show your hands, clap, show some love. I think that's also very appropriate.
Wow. Thanks, everybody. I'm humbled. I'm humbled.
I love that we got the Ellery yell. You got kudos.
Yeah,
From,
I was
like,
fun to do that one. Hey, Ellery.
All right. So take it away, Brandon.
Okay, so
I'm gonna sing for the answer, for the healer whose work is never done, for the heroes that you don't know.